How did you meet your significant other? I was waitressing. He came in all the time with his friends. Him and I became friendly, played jokes on each other. He grew to be one of my favorite regular customers. Then, there were a few weeks when he didn't show up at all, and I realized that I really missed him. I didn't have any of his contact details. I told myself that if he ever came back in, I needed to take the chance and ask him out. Next night he came in. I guess we both had the same idea. He asked me before I could. I wrote my number down on a piece of receipt paper which he still has. We went out the next night, and we've been together ever since. He's the love of my life. Way back in 1980, I was working in South FL. A guy I worked with was retiring soon and had purchased a vacation cabin in North GA. He showed me a picture of the cabin, and posing in front was a dark-haired beauty who he identified as his daughter. I remarked she was very attractive. Forward a few weeks and he tells me the daughter had just broken up with her boyfriend, was in the dumps, and asked if I wanted to ask her out. We went on a blind date. We're married 2 years later, and now have 3 grown children and planning where to go for our 37th anniversary. I was very drunk at a house party in college and was making my way to the bathroom to go throw up when I saw a girl who just lost a drinking game, and had to chug a cup of a bunch of different alcohols. She looked like she really didn't want to, and I figured since I was going to go throw up anyway, I might as well do it. In a hot tub. I was about 14 and her best friend was dating my best friend. I put my arm around her and said, "Do you come here often?" knowing it was an extremely cheesy pickup line. Now, about 16 years later, I still use that line on her when she's in the bathroom, in bed, in the kitchen. We were at a business networking event where the rule was that you were not allowed to buy drinks for yourself. Whatever you bought you had to put it into someone else's hand as an opener to conversation. So this gorgeous brunette walked up to me, put a gin and tonic in my hand, and introduced herself. "Hello, wife." She saw this comment I wrote and decided to DM me out of curiosity. My sister and her boyfriend, let's call him R, wanted to set me up on a blind date with R's co-worker. They've been trying to set it up for like a month, but it never pushed through. One day while I was in a cafe, a guy who has been staring at me just introduced himself and talked to me. After a while, he asked me out on a date, and because I was being cautious, I agreed to go, on the condition that we double date with my sister and her boyfriend. He agreed. On the night of a date, me, my sis, and R met up with my date. The two started freaking out when they saw him. He was the one that I was supposed to go on a blind date with. It's been 16 years since then. We now have 3 kids. As for my sis and, they got married too and they have a son. On the train, he was on his way back from seeing a client. I was on my way back from working at a trade fair. Neither of us felt particularly like talking, but somehow we didn't stop talking once we started. We exchanged numbers and kept messaging, talking back and forth, and started dating not quite a month later. That fateful train ride was 4 years ago. We've been happy with each other and uncharacteristically talkative around each other ever since, and got married last year. I met him on a RuneScape private server of all places. Reddit. Actually, we were both active in a dating sub, a sub about a dating app, not a sub specifically for dating, which ended up creating a fitness challenge. The general idea began as, improve yourself so you can be a better partner and find someone. We were placed in the same fitness group and really hit it off. 3.5 years later, we're planning our wedding 3. I love telling this story. I saw him in the grocery store, and I thought he was handsome. I approached him in frozen foods as he was looking at a 5-pound bag of chicken nuggets. I asked if he was married, and when he said no, I asked if he would like to take me out sometime. He put the bag of chicken nuggets on his head like he was about to pass out, and we both laughed. We are married with 4-year-old twin boys now. 1010 would recommend approaching a handsome stranger in the supermarket. We were in the same class for a program for people on welfare. Soon after the classes ended, I found a job in the city. I recommended that she apply since we were still hiring, and she got hired too. Not soon after that, I helped her out by letting her know my house had a room open to rent, one house 5 bedrooms. I was a tenant, and she moved in. I wasn't seeking any kind of relationship with her. One day I heard her laughing while watching YouTube, and it was the most beautiful and genuine laugh. I thought to myself, "Duck." A couple weeks later we were watching Stranger Things and we started holding hands and cuddling. We're getting married next year. His parents bought the house next to my grandparents' house when his mom was pregnant with him, and I was too. I assume that I met him when he came home from the hospital. It's not something I remember. He's just always been a part of my life. There was a period of time where we hadn't seen each other for over 8 years, and one night I was Facebook stalking a second cousin of mine, and my old childhood friend's mom popped up. Through her I found him, reached out, and within 3 months we were dating. Next month we celebrate our 3rd wedding anniversary. We met online on this really cringy anime-themed roleplay website and have been together for 4 years and married now. We try to forget about the site, but sometimes we reminisce and cringe together. I was really into Scott Pilgrim vs. the World when it came out in theaters when I was in high school. Bought all of the graphic novels, saw it 4 times in theaters, bought the soundtracks, and bought the video game when it came out. I was obsessed. After classes ended and as I would walk to the buses, I noticed on occasion this girl walking down the halls wearing a Scott Pilgrim shirt. I had to meet this girl. Well, the day came during a field trip to Gettysburg, and there she was wearing the shirt. I got so nervous, had to work up the courage. And she was also with a friend who was best friends with my previous girlfriend. Oh boy, this was going to be tough. Ended up not being too bad. I asked her the obvious question if she was a Scott Pilgrim fan, and we hit it off from there surprisingly. Even more a coincidence, when we got to the buses, all I wanted to do was talk to her more about Scott Pilgrim, and we didn't because she sat next to her friend, but she was a seat behind me. This entire field trip, it was destiny, lol. Anyways, we're close to 8 years strong together, and we'll watch Scott Pilgrim once a year. Technically met each other when we were kids. She was in my sister's Girl Scout troop and I was the older brother who played Game Boy at the Girl Scout meetings. Our moms were troop leaders together, so we knew each other for years as kids by proximity. While in college, she saw me at my work while she was on a first date with someone and she was attracted to me. Found me on FB and friended me. Just casual FB friends for about 1.5 years. I had some bad luck in dating and I got drunk one night and decided to mock guys on Twitter. Drew a 6-pack on my stomach in Sharpie and put it on Instagram, making a duck face and stupid bicep flex, and said Tinder dudes be like. She commented on it and said, "Why have a 6-pack when you can have the whole keg?" I said, "Is that a fat joke?" She said it wasn't, and we were playing back and forth. Asked her on a date 2 days later, and that was 4.5 years ago. We are getting married in June. She was my waitress when I was out with some friends. I left my number first and only time ever she called, and 19 years later we are still together. Shooting pool, the arcade, Myrtle Beaches, C. June 7, 1982. Married 3 months later. He was playing golf in the Walmart parking lot. She sat down next to me on the first day of grad school. We both were into Neil Gaiman and modern poetry. I let her borrow the first few trades of The Sandman. After that we started hanging out more. I showed her around the city. She was from out of town. Bought her a train pass with 20 on it. But I was slow to make a move. If it wasn't for her roommate saying, "Dude, guys don't buy train passes for you if they don't like you, we might not be together." Been together 7 years. College, my sophomore year, I was on the men's lacrosse team and she was on the women's lacrosse team. It was the first week of school. I just transferred from another college and I was sitting with a few people at lunch. She walked in and I asked my friends who she was and they let me know. I said I am going to end up marrying that girl. She had a BF. 5 years later found out that he was a dick at the time, and some guy that obviously liked her said good luck trying to get that. She eventually sat down at the same table as me and we chatted. Apparently one of the other girls on her team let her know what I said about marrying her later that day. I received a text a few hours later from a random number and it was her. That's where it all started. We were very good friends for a while and she eventually ended things with her BF and we started dating a few months later. We have been together for 6 years and we are getting married next year. OkCupid. After wafting through about 2 years of bullshit, failed dates, ghosting, etc. I messaged this girl. At that point I was desensitized. Why bother putting effort into your first message when 95% of girls don't reply? I hit her with some really corny dad joke and she did reply and laughed. We got to talking, eventually agreed to meet up for a beer. We agreed going in that we'd start with just a beer and lay everything out on the table. If either of us wanted to cancel the date we would. No hard feelings. A beer turned into two, turned into dinner, that turned into a second date, then a third. The first year turned into a second, then a third. Now we're engaged and just booked a wedding venue. We both didn't do so hot on a test and we decided to do corrections together. Ended up talking for hours and I fell for her immediately. We then pretended to fail the next test to have an excuse to hang out even though we did well. Started dating after that and it's been a great 2 years so far. We met while playing Maple Street together 10 years ago. He was my guild master. We got married in the game, and we were friends online for a while. I finally met him in person a year and a half ago, and now I am living with him in Toronto. We met at work. We got hired 6 months apart to design bridges and neither of us had ever designed a bridge before. Although we had all the needed qualifications to make our boss believe we were capable of learning this. In other words, we were both fresh out of engineering grad school and had a strong background in analysis. Our desks were side by side, and we liked each other immediately. Our dynamic was very much office husband office wife. It stayed like that for 2 years. He was very good at designing bridges, as it turned out, and moved up quickly. I was only okay at designing bridges, and was not moving up, so I took a job in a different department. Thankfully, I have moved up well here, and after I left, we realized we missed each other, and started dating. We live together now, and couldn't be happier. He still designs bridges. Not me but my parents. They met volunteering at a homeless shelter on Christmas Day. He was middle-classish posh, just starting out as a solicitor. She comes from a very working-class family, was teaching art. I love their story. In high school, she was the dance coach for the little kids and saw her leading them during a basketball halftime show. I recently looked up the Facebook messages I sent her convincing her to accept my friend's request. So cringy. We were in college. I was sitting in a cafe on campus, trying to coordinate catering for an event my club was hosting. I was at a table that was next to an outlet, a rare commodity in mid-February with midterms around the corner. This person comes up to my table and asks if he can sit there. He had a paper to write and I was next to the only free outlet. I said sure and made my call to the campus caterer. When I get off the phone, he asked me what that was about. I was a little shocked at how forward that was, but I told him anyway. We got to chatting, and I found out he was a freshman, but turning 21 in a week due to starting college late. I laughed because I had celebrated my 21st birthday a month prior and we realized we had been born almost exactly a month apart. I found him quite charming, and would have asked him out, but I was in a relationship with someone else at the time. So, we friended each other on the Book of Faces and went our separate ways. I invited him to my club's event, but he was in the acting program and was in the middle of a show, so he couldn't come. I figured he would just be another one of those people you meet in college and never go beyond that. The summer happened. I broke up with the guy I was dating and joined a dating site to try to find some casual flings. My friend from February makes a post on the Book of Faces saying, "What does it mean when someone says you're handsome in a serial killer kind of way?" Through some snooping, I discover he's also on a dating site. I don't like or comment, but I do make a mental note. Later that day, on said dating site, I find him in my matches. So I draft a message, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me," and at the end I type, "Peas, I don't think you look like a serial killer." Now, some people might find this off-putting and weird, and I don't deny that it was, but he liked it and responded immediately. We set a date to meet up, both of us thinking we're going to have a great one-night stand. Of course, I wouldn't have typed this opus if we had managed to keep it to a one-night stand. We'll be celebrating 6 years together this summer. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.